Hey guys, so I'm not gonna lie, I had a really hard time knowing what to do with this assignment. So um, I'm gonna play for you a clip from Fred Rogers. He is like the first influencer that I know about.
So many people have helped me to come to this night. Some of you are here, some are far away, some are even in heaven. All of us have special ones who have loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are? Those who have cared about you and wanted what was best for you in life. 10 seconds of silence. I'll watch the time. Whomever you've been thinking about, how pleased they must be to know the difference you feel they've made. You know, they're the kind of people television does well to offer our world.
So when you think about the people who have influenced you, you're probably not gonna call them influencers. Maybe could you call them heroes? What would you call a hero? Heroes are typically superhumans that do extraordinary things. But what if heroes are actually just ordinary people, like the ones who influenced you, your heroes, the ones who believed in you and what you have to offer, the people connected to you who've been supporting you, and the choices that they've made to let you know and to get you to where you are now. So when you think of what a person of influence means, you think of people you hear from the headlines. Maybe the guy I just showed you, maybe this girl, maybe this one, influencers. But they brought their passion to the masses. So Fred Rogers had a passion for children's programming, and he used TV as his medium. Michelle had a passion for makeup that she used YouTube for, and Charlie for dancing that she used TikTok for. And in this way, they followed their passions. Something essential about them that they just pursued. So those might be people that you've heard about. What about the people you haven't heard about? They call those unsung heroes. So Malcolm Alexander was incarcerated for false testimony, and he was in prison for 38 years for a crime he never committed. And Johnny Tallbear, same situation happened to him, 25 years. And then Miss Karen Thompson stepped in and used her attorney skills to get him out. And not just them. So this is actually a nonprofit started by two lawyers in 1992, and they have seen a lot of people be incarcerated on bad law practicing. So they got together and they started this nonprofit to help get people out of there. And people have been spending lifetimes in prison for when they're completely innocent, and they saw this need, so they stepped in. So not only those two guys, but these guys too. It's a lot of them. So many years together that these guys have been in prison for and robbed of being able to live their life. And then if you step back even further, since 92, they've helped 375 people get out of prison um, for crimes they've never committed. And it's a big overwhelming problem. There's over 60,000 at this moment that are innocent and sitting in prison now, and that's what the whole uh, nonprofit is looking at, and everybody involved with it, and they see this problem and they face it every day, and they keep fighting for it, one person at a time, one Malcolm Alexander at a time, and they believe in what they're doing, and they hear their stories, and they fight for them. So they're really, though, if you think about it, no different than who believed in you and who fought for you to get you to where you are. So when I just talked to you about how big that problem was with the exonerations, did that feel a little bit overwhelming? So that's what scope and sensitivity is. And people who have studied philanthropy for eons have studied Mother Teresa and how she was so effective. And she understood, and they're finding through these other studies why that's true, that if you look at one person and see the story of one person, then you're far more likely to act than when you stand back and look at the big picture and you get overwhelmed with how big and just ginormous of a problem that it is. So Christopher C. did these control groups where they split the groups into two, and they raised funds for kids based on one photo of one child or a photo of a group of children, and found that the donors were twice as likely to donate if it was a photo of one kid. They also found in another study that if you know the person that needs the donation, then you're also far more likely to give. And if you know that it's somebody who knows somebody that you know, then you're also more likely to give. So in that way, it's kind of like a ripple effect. You're most generous with your closest circle, and then a little less, but still generous uh, outside of that, and then less and less as it goes on. So that's why when you get farther away from the single person or from somebody that you know, then you're far less likely to actually contribute to help alleviate the problem. So they find that this is human nature, that the connections all between us should balance out, because every time that you have that ripple effect in action, well, everybody's connected. So it's biologically, physiologically, and psychologically just part of our makeup. So it took connections to make us, and it takes connections to keep us. Actually, have found in several studies that our our social connections are just as important to be maintained as much as our diet and exercise when it comes to our health. So there's a landmark study done by Stanford University that's also been referenced by the World Council for Health and now several other publications, by the way, um, that they have been studying for a long time about the increasing sense of isolation among people who are uh, actually more connected than ever technically, more connected than ever. And yet there's been such a growing sense of people feeling isolated that it's really scaring scientists and health professionals because of the health effects. So they did a study in 2 years between 2018 and 2020, an increase of 13% of perceived loneliness. More than half the people were feeling lonely. And the problem is that what that looks like is it's a negative feedback loop, so it's an exponential problem. So basically what happens is if I'm your neighbor, you and I have been living next to each other for a couple of years, we've been cool, but then I just get it in my head that I'm not sure if you like me. And so I start behaving a little bit more cautiously. Pull back with my emotions, and it's a self-preservation mechanism on my part. But then after a while, you're going to start to notice. And so then you start getting in your head, well, why? I wonder if she doesn't like me. Maybe she doesn't like me. I wonder what I did. And then you take that to your job and to your friends, and I've been taking it to my job and my friends, and then both of us are more cautious, and uh, we get into these self-preservation modes because we have this ongoing feedback in our heads that we're just convincing ourselves that we're lonely until we really become lonely. and so it's in the studies they've referenced it as kind of like an iceberg, and all we can really sense and perceive is just the tip of the iceberg. But the actual loneliness is far deeper and far greater and harder to address for that reason. Um, so the health professionals are really worried about this because it's been such a hugely growing problem that it's and it does take years to set in, but it's also because of the enormity of how deep the problem gets because of the iceberg effect. It's very difficult indeed to fix. But and it often leads to depression, suicide, and the problem is it really does have physiological side effects on a person's health and comorbidities. They said it's actually as bad for your health as smoking or obesity and other things. So they've been really worried about how bad this problem is getting. And the problem is that they say is that it's completely subjective, and study after study, they have proven over and over that it is absolutely zero correlation with um, uh, a person's feelings of, or I'm sorry, a person's feelings of isolation are completely unrelated to a person's number of friends or to their the closeness in their relationship. So um, yeah, there's like it's a scary thing because we are connected, but we don't think we're connected, and that's what's scary. So it's really about our perception and what we see, the connections that we see around us, the influences that we see around us. It's about our perception. So you can influence, and you're already connected because you have a community. So I'm going to tell you about Leah Denbach. This is her mom. She was an orphan, homeless and on the streets by the age of 3. And this guy that found her was a police officer just doing his everyday job. Um, and he found her and took her to Mother Teresa's orphanage. And Mother Teresa raised her for a couple years, and then she found her family in Canada. So uh, Leah grew up with her mom's story having a really huge impact on her, and knowing that homelessness is an issue, she decided to take her love of photography that she got into when she was 12 years old and start telling people stories through photographs. So she's 17 now, and this is an example of one of her stories. So this is Ronnie. He lost his daughter when she was 6 years old to cancer. And in the aftermath, he and his wife were pretty depressed, and his wife took her life tragically. And Ronnie just had a really hard time dealing with it. He got himself into drugs and alcohol, and lost everything. And he's having a hard time getting off the streets. And this is Arnav and Shamik, and uh, they have 5 brothers and live with their mom in a makeshift shelter. And she's busy all the time trying to scrape up pennies that she can get uh, from panhandling to be able to feed them. And he's taking care of his brothers, and he really wants to go to school. And they're just also in kind of um, a stuck situation. And every story that Leah and her father would come across when they would talk to people, um, they like Catherine. She had said, most people ignore us, and um, these guys really experience the margins from society where they're shunned from communities at such a so often at such a high rate that uh, it just kind of deepens the depression and stuff. And um, and that's besides the problems that they've already been facing and dealing with, they're trying to deal with. And but they also make community among themselves. Um, and they're that's a natural human instinct, and they have to look out for each other because they're also often the victim of violence. They have like a 90% rate of being victims of violence. It's heartbreaking. So Leah has taken something that's essential about her and two things actually with her mom's story and something that's important to her uh, and her love of photography, and she put it all together to do something about it and bring awareness to the issue. So all of us have something that makes us who we are, and so besides Leah having her own story, she was influenced too, and this was um, similar project by one of people who really influenced her to begin her charity work. And this is another guy who has a passion also for photography, except he also really has a heart for endangered species. So he's created a photo arc, they call it, where it's on a mission to photograph every endangered species before they're all gone. And he's already up to 14,000 out of the 20. And but you know what? It doesn't have to be a big deal like professionals. These guys are they have jobs where they're also working in photography and film, but they just use their Instagrams. So Adriano, he works for Viva Democracy now, and he has a heart for people going through social protests and movements, and he works to document the stuff they do and go through. And same with Andres Rodriguez. He he does this, but for Puerto Rico, and like has worked for documenting the humanitarian crisis there. So it's really not about um, you don't have to be professional. You don't even have to be a semi-professional. Um, it's just it's just about whatever you're using with whatever you're having. This guy who went down to Mexico to assist people, some surgeons who were going down there to do some cataract surgery for some locals. Uh, he he's not even a photographer; he's just a painter, but he really just wanted to help them out and to to learn, what they do and everything. And yeah, he went down there, was able to photograph for them, and just really grateful for the opportunity and has been able to use his pictures to get the word out to ophthalmologist publications and networks about the needs of what's going on down there. And so he's just a hobbyist. So there's a story that Mr. Rogers likes to tell, and it's about the 1976 Seattle Special Olympics. There was a little boy. There were 9 runners, and there was a little boy who fell and hurt himself. And when he started crying, uh, they said that the other eight runners all heard him, and they came and helped him up, and they all linked arms and finished the race together. And it's a really beautiful, heartwarming story. Now, if you Snopes it, you find out that's not true, but it was still 2 or 3 people that still came and helped him, and that's the point. It doesn't have to be everybody, but it's still the point that there are people out there doing the right thing. And it actually happened again, not super long ago, when these guys were at the Olympics, and the guy in front was already a bronze medal winner from the previous Olympics, and he was about to cross the finish line, but he thought that he already did, and so he started slowing down. So the guy that was right behind him could have just passed him by and finished it and gotten the bronze again, and instead he knew that the guy in front of him was the rightful winner, so he did the right thing and just pointed out where the actual finish line was, and that's really cool because those guys spend their lifetimes training for that stuff, and it's very competitive. And it's whatever you're doing, wherever you are, you can always just do the right thing. It's always just about whatever choice you're making, situation you're at. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose. and it's just your community network around you. So those are the principles really that I learned, is that when you're being true to yourself and you're being true to always remember and that people influence you, and to be grateful for those people who helped you become who you are. And if you always keep those things in mind, um, and open your eyes to the people you connected with, then I know for me anyway, it really makes me uh, think twice about uh, not helping when I know I should. And I think it's actually doing this project has really made me convicted in a lot of ways. So I hope you learned something like I did, and I'm really just so sorry it's so long. And I wish I knew how to make it smaller. And I've tried. You don't even know how many times I've been trying. So thank you. If you made it this far, you are my hero. Thank you.
But you know, the toughest thing is to love somebody who has done something mean to you, especially when that somebody has been yourself. Have you ever done anything mean to yourself? Well, it's very important to look inside yourself and find that loving part of you. That's the part that you must take good care of and never be mean to, because that's the part of you that allows you to love your neighbor. And your neighbor is anyone you happen to be with at any time of your life. Respecting and loving your neighbor can give everybody a good feeling.